Welcome, one and all, to In-House Connect. Thank you for spending your breakfast time or your lunchtime with us. And special thanks to our wonderful sponsor today, Unblinded and Callaghy Law, and our fantastic presenters today, Sean Callaghy and Michael Smikin, who are going to teach us how to use influence to make your voice heard and acted upon in your organization. This is our 75th webinar of the year. Are you here for the first time, or have you tuned to an IHC webinar before? Today's session will be presented by Sean Callaghy, who is the Chief Visionary Officer and co-founder of Unblinded, and his law partner, Michael Smikin from Callaghy Law. It's my pleasure to introduce Sean. Sean is an entrepreneur, international speaker, philanthropist, and one of America's top trial attorneys, online personalities, and creator of various peak performance technologies. And he's the only person to do any of those things who is legally blind at the same time. For 25 years, aided by his unique insights, love for people, ability to see and create transformational breakthroughs, Sean has achieved an incredibly diverse variety of unique successes. Sean has been favorably compared to some of the top speakers and influencers in the world. As a byproduct of his technologies, Sean is one of the only two attorneys out of 1.2 million attorneys in America to achieve two top 100 national jury verdicts between 2014 and 2016, and the only one who was legally blind. He also collected more than $500 million on behalf of his healthcare clients, built and sold a 40-person law firm in a little over a year in his 20s when he was fresh out of law school. He created the most rapidly successful training, coaching, and development program from his coaching school out of anybody who has ever attended the coaching school and certification. He has publicly spoke more than 4,000 times to audiences that are consistently shocked to see what they didn't see in their lives, careers, and businesses. Sean is the founder and president of Callaghy Law, a more than 100 plus team with offices in 5 states, and the creator of the Unblinded formula and hundreds of hours of content on integrity-based human influence, which empowers and co-creates results that fulfill dreams through his unparalleled human breakthrough technologies in sales, business, and life, going from hello to yes, and what to do with that access for success. As a speaker, Sean has broken sales records on the largest personal development stages in the world. He has spoken for T-Mobile, Disney executives, Bristol Myers Squibb, national news networks, legal association, and has raised over $7.4 million for charity on stage during his last 4 speaking engagements. Sean is now on a mission to influence influencers to merge ecosystems, so 1 + 1 = 1 trillion relationships that make the world an even greater place. It is my sincere pleasure, honor, and I'm so thrilled and excited to have Sean and Michael on with us today. Sean, welcome back to In-House Connect.
Yeah, Shai, I have no idea who that guy is. The number one thing to do is cut down that bio. So sorry for all that, everybody. Appreciate you, Shai, for reading it all, for going through it all. Shai, what you've done here at In-House Connect is nothing short of a growth-minded, heart-centered, masterful journey, bringing folks that are in the in-house and general counsel space together. So thank you for that. It is always an honor and privilege to serve here. So thank you. Michael Smikin is, I would go with, one of the 3 greatest accomplishments of my life. There's not a finer litigator in America than Michael. I stand by that. We go up against top law firms, top 10, 100, all the big guys, and consistently, and we're not a tiny firm, but consistently have profoundly unique outcomes because of this work. When I met Michael, he was in the old Joe Weider comic books, for anybody who's old enough to have grown up in the 1970s and see those little ads of the 98-pound weakling with sand kicked in his face. That's Michael when I met him, and the journey he has gone through to build himself into a warrior for truth and integrity. We use a lot of words. We're going to define some of those words today as we leave you in a more optimal place in your ability to have your voice heard today than ever before. And we've spoken here at In-House Connect probably 6 or 7 times. And I've really thought about how to create the greatest connectivity and give the greatest value during these times. We've received great reviews. I'm very grateful for that. But I want to create another level, and that's what today is going to be. Thank you all for your trust. Michael Smikin, thank you for everything that you've done to become who you are. Michael, any quick hello you'd like to share with these heart-centered, growth-minded, at least desiring masterful or mastery, somewhat masterful humans to incredibly masterful humans right now? Michael, please.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here, obviously, with Shai, this community. This is our, I think, sixth time sharing, and bringing this formula to the world is an incredibly fulfilling experience. And hopefully can create some masterful breakthroughs for all you folks here.
Awesome. We want to give you things to think about. Please feel free to contribute and jump in the chat. If you want to get the most value out of today, there's a few different ways that you can listen. The first way you can listen is back, arms crossed, looking to do what we call mismatch, which ironically is part of what we talk about as you have your voice heard today. For the folks out there in the space of mismatching, looking for something that is not optimal and not correct here, I simply ask you this question, then why are you here? There has to be some gap between where you are and where you want to be and having your voice heard. There has to be something, otherwise you wouldn't be here. Perhaps you're saying, hey, I want to run a webinar and have a conversation, but it's still the same outcome, right? There's still something more that you're seeking. Thank you for the pinprick of light to be here, unless you're somebody here just to say, these guys don't know what they're talking about, and should never have us back. For you, we welcome you, and we'd love to have you interact at some point in the chat or even come live, not out of any competitive in your faceness, but instead to open your listening and to serve you. Because 27 years down the road, here's what is abundantly clear to me. As we have gone up against some of the alleged top attorneys and some of the top jury consulting firms in the country, is how often people do not distinguish. Look, in law school, we learn distinctions. We learn the ability and mastery to distinguish. We read cases, we study sentences, we read statutes, we look at contracts, we analyze all of these things to come up with distinctions of conversations we can have, principles we can advance. And in that masterful development of distinguishing, which is why our law professors became our law professors, because they went to top schools, because they on the LSATs were able to advance distinctions, find distinctions, patterns that were different and get higher scores than other people. I went to Columbia University as an undergrad. I did not have the mastery probably of some of you to have scored as high on the game section and other aspects of the LSAT. I did perform extremely well in law school, not as optimally at Columbia, where I was more of a B student. My opening point, because we'll come back to the most open in a moment, is where can we find not a tip, not a trick, but instead in actually, what if there's a new paradigm of how you think about having your voice heard, how you think about what influence is and is not. We're going to distinguish some of those things with practical examples today for the most brilliant, the Harvard Law graduate, the Harvard undergrad who received 4. We beat those people in court. My little law school Seton Hall, with a masterful acceleration in its moot court processes, often beats the Ivy League now. I had a role in that distinction of their rise in moot court. Michael did a mock trial there. I share those things to reset the paradigm. Graduating with a 4.0, having a perfect LSAT score. My son, who is number 2 in his law school class right now at Seton Hall, second year going to third year, he was number 1 after 3 semesters. He's number 2 right now. And all of his friends are going into the space of big law. The pattern my son recognizes, the pattern we talk about, is the pattern of significance and fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Because academic achievement, the pedigree of where you work, these are things I divorced myself from 27 years ago because I was that. I did graduate from the top of my class in law school. I did get all the biggest job offers in New York and New Jersey. And I realized after taking one of them very quickly that there's a different pattern and a different path in mastery. This is not to diminish your identity for all that you've achieved, because we've been here at In-House Connect. We had some people go, I work in a Fortune 10 company. Amazing. I've spoken at Fortune 10 companies. I've completely disrupted the top salespeople, the top managers and leaders in these corporations when they open their heart and mind and have a little bit more time than we have today. So I reach in urgently, since we're in the virtual space, we only have 90 minutes, to share with you, thank you for the pinprick of light, because most people are not at all optimal and don't have the depth to actually serve and fulfill the outcomes we're promising here. We can never fulfill these promises in 90 minutes or a promise of revolutionizing all of your communication. But instead of a tip, the greater value you can receive today is not a singular tip, but a new paradigm of perspective on how to have your voice heard that for 95% of us is incredibly different than the patterns we have learned. So, Michael, just at the outset, the question for everybody today is, where is your voice being heard currently versus where do you want your voice to be heard and at what level? Many of you are in situations that there is very little hope of changing. Not most of you, some of you, with very little hope of changing. Because if the dynamic is a political construct where there's a pre-existing prism and where somebody has you in an existing frame of what your voice and perspective means, that's a really challenging pattern to disrupt. We'll discuss that challenge. Our discussion point for today is how we can move forward overall, quantitatively and qualitatively. So if you're in a situation right now, we've worked with a lot of people from In-House Connect. We've had some remarkable outcomes in getting to talk to people, and immense gratitude. People, I didn't know what you guys were up to in the beginning, but wow, like, thank you for coming forward, having these conversations with me. But the promise isn't, hey, I got this really difficult boss. I have this really difficult leader who I need to understand my advice and my opinions, and I'm just not getting through. We're going to give you what to do with that, but we're also going to be real. That may not be changeable, but we are going to give you a path to arming yourself so you are infinitely capable of moving to other paradigms and worlds where your voice will be heard. This is not personal development, hyperbolic foolishness. This is how we influence federal judges with integrity in our top 100 national jury verdicts. I'm in California right now in a case where he was opposed to one of the top 10 law firms in the country. Michael went out there, and the California federal judge said to Michael something fascinating that Michael will tell you in a moment. On a highway to resolving this business dispute, our client had a tremendous winning outcome. The reason? Because Michael has recreated his paradigm. Michael Smikin, my co-presenter today, my partner, my friend, has recreated his paradigm of understanding human influence. He was closed, energetically mismatching. He was out of his mind. Some people get frustrated when you don't. Shai could fire us and not have us back, but I simply won't do that. Because what I'm doing right now is speaking to the greatest value for the most people. I'm not ever, nor should you be, in any group dynamic here to serve the minority interest, the difficult interest, the resistant interest. I'm here to add the most value to everyone. And when you communicate, speak into the listening of the most extremely difficult, so you begin to open the listening of all that are less difficult with whom to communicate. We're going to lean in, step in a moment. But what we're sharing right now is how we've influenced the minds of judges, corporate executives, our clients, sales leaders, growth-minded people, hyper-conservative, certainty-driven, maven expert witnesses, all of these different dynamics of humanity, which we have names for, labels for, patterns to discuss for how we get there. But for you, it begins with this paradigm. It's possible. It's not only possible, it's infinitely accessible and available. And shame on our undergraduate universities and our law schools for not having this work. With my co-creator of Top 100 National Jury Verdicts, my co-creator of Top State Jury Verdicts, and we're not personal injury attorneys, we're business, litigation, and corporate folks, Michael Smikin, please share anything you want to share in 15 or 20 seconds that you think would further contextualize this opening, along with what happened with that federal judge in California. I think he said something unbelievably offensive to you. Michael.
So yeah, and literally this just happened on, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday. We're in a full-blown settlement conference. The judge looks over as I'm contextualizing and opening up listening for the judge. He looks over at my other law partner, Brian. He goes, he's weird, right? Not bad weird, just atypical weird. He doesn't communicate like lawyers do, which I found to be a compliment because I don't like to be thought of as an attorney. I like to be thought of as a person who communicates with transparency, integrity at all times, which many attorneys do. But I'm looking for that integrous connection, which includes sometimes communicating more than you probably should when trying to contextualize and open listening. And what I love about this community, Sean, is these people are ready to rock and roll. Almost 90% of the room is here to address a very specific challenge or know that influence is necessary to enhance their career growth and also to make money. We have one brave soul who said they're bored and in search of entertainment, and you will find entertainment here as well, hopefully. But a full 90% is here, engaged, ready to learn what influence mastery is.
Make fun of Michael and I and all our eccentricities throughout the webinar to entertain the group. That would be super fun. So we are eccentric, we are odd, we are weird for sure. And we're fun and we laugh at ourselves too. And that's all a part of human influence. So please satirically have at it, provided you're going to get some entertainment out of it, but also receive some value. So Michael, shall we step in masterfully for today?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. The question is, where is your influence currently? Where do you want to increase? So fundamentally, and Michael, feel free to pop up the full formula slide when you get a chance, and you folks have seen this slide before. We can go so many different directions for so long. So we're going to stay with several macro concepts and then drop into some micro examples. So the scope on the macro of where this comes up is it comes up and you're giving advice to your clients, potentially getting a new job, seeking to have your voice heard and creating a new partnership, maybe opening your own firm, maybe you're opening up your own consulting company, maybe it's opening up your own business. It comes up and having your voice heard for getting funding for what you want, for what your clients want. It comes up in settlement conferences with judges if you're involved in litigating matters. It comes when there's deal points and structures that are difficult to deal with. So we can go a myriad of different directions in depth and isolation of any one of those or hundreds of other different situations. So in contemplating our work together for today, we're not going to reach extreme depth in any of those scenarios, but instead seek to reframe how you relate to your influence so we can serve you in all of those situations. What does having your voice heard actually mean to you? And please feel free to drop it in the chat. Michael, feeding anything that's coming up, that will be outstanding. Because when I originally met Michael Skill, what influence and having his voice heard meant is being silent until spoken to, being extraordinarily respectful. Each of these words mean things. As we are attorneys, we do it all the time, but do we do it as we approach influence? So what does respect mean? What does leadership mean? What does management mean? What is this distinction, if any, for you between being in-house counsel or being general counsel? What does networking mean? What does judge mean? What's the distinction between a federal judge and a state judge to you? What does business people mean inside a firm? What does a director mean? What does the C-suite mean? If each of us immediately wrote down the definitions of all of these terms, we would have, there's 200-ish folks on here today, we would have 200 definitions for the 15 or so labels and terms I've currently defined. So for us to advance, we have to fundamentally define a few terms so we can change the paradigm of how our voice is even heard. So first, let's talk about our voice being heard through the paradigm of what influence means, and then what influence with integrity means, and then a paradigm of when we think it's entirely appropriate to conceal and not be in full transparent integrity. What influence means from us is taking something from your mind, heart, or soul and transferring it to another human. This is what influence is, having it received and acted upon. Frame 2 is, how do you assess the human being with whom you are communicating? Is it people? He's a jerk. He's a nice guy. They're a nice they. How do you define the human with whom you're communicating? We live in a world That's fascinating for me, and I could speak on this for 10 hours. I teach on diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging in large corporations, Fortune 10 and 50, 100, and 500 companies. And as we begin to think about the paradigm, and I'm a blind man, by the way, percent of people like me are unemployed, but how is it that we think about pattern recognition versus inappropriate stereotyping, inappropriate generalizing? So, and the reason this matters is because to influence humans, we have to understand what they're thinking and to have our voice heard, to create influence, we have to understand what people are thinking, and people do not tell us what they're thinking accurately or precisely. Sometimes they're not communicating accurately with us about what they're thinking because they just don't know what they're actually thinking. And they're thinking so many things and their thoughts are so scattered that if we ask them what they're thinking, they will pick one of 27 things they're thinking and tell us that and omit 26 others. They're not intentionally lying, but they're practically incapable, or they've entered a pattern of human communication where all that they're doing is answering with one and selecting one and thinking they've appropriately and integriously answered the question. We'll come back to integrity in a minute. Some people are concealing what they're thinking from us. The bigger the company you work in, the more risk mitigation oriented it will be. So the less apt people are to intentionally tell you what they're actually thinking. These lead to enormous challenges in having your voice heard. Now we have solves for this. We have tools for this. But the challenge is to have your voice heard, to have influence, to transfer something from your mind, your heart, your soul, your being to somebody else requires you to understand at a high level what they are thinking and what they want. And they could not want certain things, like that could be the not wanting of things and the wanting of things. And your discernment of this is vital. This is why just a few minutes ago, I shared with all of you that maybe there's some situations we can't help you because for some of you, you are the greatest singular threat practically to some other person who is a friction point, a wall, a blockage to having your voice heard. Maybe it's your boss. Maybe it's the C-suite. Maybe it's the CFO, right? Maybe it's a director of some sort who's business growth minded and you're not. Maybe it's somebody who's in the office of general counsel with you that has a different perspective. Maybe they think you're better than them and that you're going to pass them. So there are folks that we're going to be dealing with that the truth of what they're thinking is they want you limited and stifled. That's just the truth. Now, what we do with that, we'll come back to before we complete because there's choices, obviously. So for now, we're not speaking into the situation where someone thinks that you are that and has decided in a completely biased way, for whatever the bias, whether it's a legally protected class or a non-legally protected class, like same gender, same sex, same religion, same national origin, same gender choice, and the person has simply decided that you are a threat to them because you're more skilled than them. And they're threatened and they want to oppress you and suppress you. Or it's for some protected reason. Whatever all those are, we're going to put those over here to the right for a moment. We'll pick that file up again in a little bit. But for now, we're in the paradigm of we can get there. And in the can get there-ness, there's going to be folks who we need to understand what they're thinking, what they're feeling. Some people are going to be really scared for a variety of different reasons, but they authentically want the good of the company to come forward. And I'm going to give you a triangular tool paradigm in a second, a triangle paradigm in a second to make assessment and several other tools for discernment of who you're dealing with. Then we're going to move into your influence at a deeper level and model. Okay. So first, this three-pronged model goes like this. Do you believe, this is when relating to other people, that the person is loyal? Not loyal to you, not loyal to somebody else they work for, but instead loyal to the stated mission of the entity. And if this is a Fortune 10 company, they're loyal to the stated mission. If you're in a 200-person company, they're loyal to the stated mission. Are they loyal to the stated mission or not? And have you created yet an agreement with them that they can or cannot be loyal to? So, for example, if you're working with the CFO and the CMO, right? Are they in alignment with the stated mission of the company, and have the three of you created a joint mission that's loyal to the corporate stated mission as well? So you have an independent stated mission that's also loyal to the corporate stated mission that you could then distinguish and discern whether or not the three of you, the five of you, the 50 of you, the 20 of you, the seven of you are loyal to. The first is loyal to stated mission, right? There's a stated mission, and the people who are a part of it are agreeing to and maintain their loyalty to it or not. And what does loyalty mean as we define it here? That they have no concealed lack of transparency. So if Michael and I are partners and Michael is planning on creating an alternative competitive law firm, and Michael and I'm checking in with him, like, Michael, like, hey, this is what we're doing. We're going to take our work to these 7 states over the next 2 years. How aligned are you not? And he's saying, like, yeah, like, I'm loyal to that. Let's go. I agree to that. And he's concealing that he's building his own law firm. He's aligning with other people, and he's obviously disloyal to the stated mission. However, let's say that Michael is inside the firm and he's not doing that, but I'm saying, hey, I want to grow into 7 states. This is the mission. He's like, oh, yeah, that sounds great. And then he goes home and tells his significant other, who happens to be his beautiful wife, Sam, who's wonderful. He says, Sam, Sean's nuts. I don't want to do this. I want to take every weekend off. I want to be home with the family, and I don't want to do this. He's also not loyal to the stated mission because we're not in alignment with the corporate mission and our individual stated mission. So that's loyalty, number one. Number two, masterful competence, right? This is less of a concern for you in having your voice heard, but more of a concern in how you are perceived. So if you want to run like any peak performing organization, this is our model: loyalty, masterful competence. People have an assessment of your masterful competence. I went to Columbia Law, Yale undergrad. I am masterfully competent. I got, a 178 on my LSAT. I graduated summa cum laude. I got a job at Proskauer Rose right out of law school. I'm in the executive suite at Disney. What are you talking about that somebody could possibly think I'm not masterfully competent? Those things have great relevance. Congratulations on all those accomplishments. But there's a secondary consideration. How do the people you're working with perceive your ability to, with masterful competence, achieve the stated outcome, the mission that we're being loyal to? The people might believe you that you're loyal to that mission, but not believe that you have the masterful competence. Maybe they say you're a naysayer. You suck the energy out of the room. You're somebody who is a deal killer, not a deal maker. They think you're misassessing the risk on litigation matters. Whatever the thing is, right? There's a question of your masterful competence. So, second dynamic of having your voice heard is like loyalty to stated mission, and whether people believe that you are, and they are as well, because that's going to affect your voice being heard. The second is, what is your masterful competence or not? The perception of it, not what it is on paper, the perception of it. The third dynamic is what we call aligned empowerment. Let's go back to the example of Michael, where I articulated, hey, we're going to go to 7 additional states in the next 2 years. We're going to actually physically open an office. We do work across the country, but have a physical presence in 7 states. Michael's like, yep, goes home and tells his beautiful wife, Sam, I can't wait. Then we articulate a plan to go about doing it. And there's 3 action steps for Michael to take in that plan. I checked back in with Michael on project management 2 weeks later. I said, Michael, how are we doing on this? And he goes, no. I had an incredible idea. Instead of step 1, 2, 3, I've been working on step 4, Sean. It's amazing. We're advancing the ball. We're driving it down the field. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? We have this stated mission. We laid out a plan to be aligned to, and you haven't been in alignment. So the third component is how you assess the alignment dynamic of others and how they assess it in you. do people perceive that when you agree to a plan of action and approach, that you will be loyal to said stated plan? So the three components for you to be that people will be assessing about you. Einstein, by the way, said make it as simple as possible, but not simpler. The paradigm looks like this. People are assessing, they don't have the language for it, but they're making discernments that may sound like, I don't know if I could trust this person. I don't know if they know what they're doing, but our frame, we invite you to adopt it, is whether or not people are loyal to the stated mission on the macro and the micro, like the dynamic of in betweenness of the group and the overall stated mission. Second, whether they're masterfully competent to achieve said stated mission, and whether or not they stay in aligned empowerment and they perceive you. How do they perceive you in those things, whatever language they may use in your performance reviews and otherwise? I pause. Michael Smikin, checking in. What would you like to emphasize? What would you like people here to know that you are hoping they're really taking away? And anything else you'd like to add, please, Michael.
As people are assessing you and you are communicating with them to open their listening, those three assessments are happening either on a conscious or an unconscious level all the time. The scarcity mindset is always present. Why should I listen to this person? Why should I give them my energy? Why should we have agreement with them if it could potentially lead to a waste of resources? Consistently find ways to contextualize, to open listening, and make sure that people hear from you that you're loyal to the stated mission, that you have the masterful competence to take them to stated missions, keep their listening opening, and then to demonstrate what aligned empowerment actually looks like to achieve results.
Okay, so now we have this paradigm. What do we do with it? We're going to give you a framework as the recreation. Everywhere you are, there is an implicit agreement that already exists. As most of us know from law school, we are not in an affirmative agreement until we actually have an affirmative agreement, whether it's written or implied or oral in our business, our life, every facet, until we're in an affirmative agreement. And I don't think we focus as much on this. What happens when we're not in an affirmative agreement? I think a lot of people think nothing happens, but quite the contrary. If we are not in affirmative agreement, we're in disagreement. Michael and I are in disagreement about everything that we're not in affirmative agreement about. Each of you are in disagreement with everyone with whom you're not in affirmative agreement. This is in your home, with your children, your friends. This is with yourself. If you haven't defined your identities, your beliefs, your rule structures, you're in disagreement with yourself in an internal conflict. And certainly you're in disagreement with the people you report to, people that report to you, people that are your laterals. So having your voice heard begins with recreating your perspective on everything we've shared today. Like you could be like, these guys are wackadoo. Answer yes. I've had two people out of the 700 plus people who've worked for me during my career ever leave working for me that I didn't want to leave. And those two, one of them I wanted to leave, just not yet. And the other one I wasn't quite sure yet. The only single person I could think of that ever left working with me or one of the companies I own the law firm, I own a number of other companies, that ever has left. So that's a credibility piece for how this all works, right? Now, once we accept the fact that we need to be in agreement, that we need to be in alignment around like, what's our stated mission? How do we relate to each other? How do we see one another's masterful competence or not? And how aligned or not on the steps of progression that we need? How competent do we perceive one another to be? And how loyal are we to the stated mission overall? Okay. How do you do that? What does that conversation sound like? What we're discerning is this person willing or not, or the people you're relating to, are they willing or not to integrously enter into a new space where your voice and their voice can be heard? If your assessment is no, then you're in a really tough spot. Our hearts empathetically go out, and we'll give you some quick thoughts and tools of, well, how do you do that? And how can you walk through and see if there's any possibility of a breakthrough or not? But there's a couple called the Gottmans, and they did an extensive study of human relationships. It was more in the romantic relationship field, but it was a study they did with the United States government over a long period of time. What they determined is once a relationship goes negative prism, 95% of the time it doesn't come back. That's 1 out of 20. So it doesn't mean there's no hope, but only 1 of 20 times when somebody has you in a negative false prism of your loyalty, your masterful competence, and your aligned empowerment, once they've negatively assessed you as it relates to their life, 1 in 20 times it comes back. And I mean fundamentally at the core. It doesn't mean they're not critical of you. People are critical, they have thoughts, but when they have discerned that you're a net negative in their life, like they see you through negative filter, negative prism, 1 out of 20 times it come back, this is something really important for you to know about. So we're going to help you know that so you can make better life decisions where your voice might be heard better elsewhere. Or we're going to help you discern when you're not in negative prism, how we could take it to an incredibly outstanding, beautiful place where your voice is heard at a higher level than ever before. So the conversation, and Michael, if we could, let's role play the conversation. Are you ready, sir?
I am. That is something that I had to deal with on a regular basis when supporting and actualizing our in-house attorneys, because most of the time they are viewed as the deal breakers,
Yeah.
the people who take the punch bowl away when the party's getting started, look for reasons to find things wrong. So the timing of this is perfect.
I'm going to give you a fun one-step solution to profoundly mitigate that, right? And let's do that before we move into the next piece. In fun, authentic, masterful, heart-centered energy. So Michael Smikin, let's do your mismatching best. Michael, I'm coming back from California. I met with our marketing team. This is unbelievable. These people are so loyal to the stated mission. We've recreated a new subdynamic of our human communication to go forward. They're unbelievably masterfully competent. We're ready to go. And we have aligned empowerment in what we're doing for the month of September. We are ready to rocket forward. I am so fired up. I'm even happy that the flight got canceled last night coming back from Sacramento to New Jersey because of how much more we could do by hanging out today. So, Michael, what do you think?
That all sounds really good. When do we put all of this in writing to make sure that we're locking all these things up?
Sean, thank you. Thank you for flying to California. I can't imagine what it was like to be away from the kids. I know Tyler starts law school today, his 3rd year. I know your daughter Courtney's heading off to Missouri for her research position in her animal ecosystem world. I know Emma starts college in a week at Maryland. And you have your young daughter. I can't even imagine how stressful that was. Thanks for going. I didn't understand that the marketing partners were so extraordinary. Fun footnote, they're in the room with me and got me on the Zoom for today. So I'm also authentically acknowledging them. And we're like, you always do this. I can't wait. I can't believe the acceleration we've had in the past year. I cannot believe what I've experienced the past 15 years. I'm ready. I'm ready. Thank you. Where do we go from here? Now, we could have a pattern of saying, oh my God, I got to be like hypey. It's just not me. Wonderful. Okay, I can understand that. But what if who you think you are isn't who you are? This is an entirely different dynamic, which we have a gift for you in a moment, our self-mastery book. It's one of our gifts for you today. That's going to help you recreate your decisions about who you are, because I don't think you're who you think you are. I don't think I am who I think I am. Just like my body, your body isn't how we were genetically predisposed and born. Maybe our height is, but our body fat content isn't genetic. I mean, there's genetic predispositions for sure. And I'm definitely not saying that anybody should or shouldn't be lovingly proud of themselves. I think everybody should love themselves exactly as they are, whether they're 1,000 pounds or 90 pounds. We have an ability to affect and make change in that dynamic, how much muscle mass, how strong we are, how long we run, if we run a marathon, can only run a mile, whatever the things are, without judgment, we have control over it. What if it's the exact same thing of how we relate to who we are and how our voice is heard, how we transfer energy, how we cause yes with people, how people like or don't like us, how people resonate or pull towards us or repelled by us? What if that is not genetic? What if it's not because somebody told you you're logically minded or somebody else told you you're too hypey? What if there's a science that is as learnable as math? So is the ability to have our voice heard. And the initial learning begins with realizing that whatever level it's at currently is not genetically predisposed. You go, well, I'm just like my parents and they're quiet and calm and introverted too. And you're asking me to be really hypey and crazy. It's not me. I'm definitely not asking for that. I am more introverted than extroverted. I have all the stories, the things I will not, for the sake of time, to demonstrate to you how introverted I have been for so much of my life and how many things I lead, how many people I lead, how many things I cause wherever I go, how my voice is now heard because I learned this science. But that begins with you recreating your identity with yourself. Fun footnote. So as I did that example with Michael of how he could have responded, acknowledged me, that would powerfully resonate. I'd say, well, Michael, what's next? I thank you. Like, receive, brother. I need your help. So what do you think we should focus on? Now we're in a different conversation because I felt seen, heard, and understood by Michael. And now I'm ready to hear him. For so many of us who are logically minded, just tell me the position. I'm not going to just tell you the position. I'm just not. Because judges, even corporate executives, people who want the bottom line, want to answer people's questions, but if they're not connected to the why underneath the what, nothing resonates and has power, right? The key takeaway is if you want to be heard initially, the quick start is to hear others at depth. The magical tool question that I want to give you is, hey, X, what I'm hearing you say is ... Am I hearing you correctly? Watch my tone, watch my body language. Hey, Michael, what I'm hearing you say is you're extremely excited about our growth and where it's going, more grateful, and you're concerned about being swallowed up by the pace of growth. And if we're going to be able to keep up with finding new teammates, you're excited, you're ready, and internally you're like, ugh, I'm really overwhelmed and I don't really feel like working 200 hours a month for the next 2 years. Michael, am I hearing you correctly?
You have heard me extremely well. Thank you for that beautiful acknowledgement.
Awesome. So that's an example of how now we can hear each other. Quick time check.
12:53.
In 2 minutes, we have a quick gift for you. I know a lot of people jump at the top of the hour, but 2 minutes of that, then a gift, and then we're going to go to questions and integration and more example and role play. But the quick roll out of this, and we're going to emphasize it more after the gifts, and then in the final 30 minutes, which I would not miss. I cannot repeat and reemphasize enough. There's always a big drop off after 1 hour in all virtual experiences. That final 30 minutes, we're going to take all of this and integrate it into powerful example after example and deal with questions. So the quick example is, hey, Michael, this is the example of how to recreate our relationship at our voice heard. So, hey, Michael, can I ask you a question? Like, let's role play out, Michael. And let's pretend I'm in-house counsel and Michael is the business creator, whatever size company you're in. He's, the CEO of the small company. He's the head of, sales, business development, the rainmaker dude, right? So, hey, Michael, can we have a conversation for a little bit? Like, set up the stage of the conversation about what? Hey, just about how I can serve you even more. That's the frame, how I can serve you even more. So now we're in that conversation. Michael, I just want to acknowledge I'm really grateful that we're having this conversation, deep acknowledgement, right? And so, Michael, what is it that you think I'm looking to create in this conversation? So, Michael, I'm in-house counsel. There's the friction between in-house general counsel and the business development people. We want our voices heard. So, Michael, what is it you think I'm looking to create here in this conversation?
Honestly, just based on the types of conversations that we usually have, there's something that we're doing that you want us to stop doing, or something that we're not doing that you want us to start doing. So let's just hear it.
Yeah. What I'm actually looking to do is first to apologize and take 100% of responsibility for all of my part in how you would feel that way about me. I completely acknowledge it. I totally validate it. Now, in fun energy, there's a whole bunch of things that I could say, like, I'm concerned about or frustrated by, but that's not the point. The point is, I want to take 100% responsibility for how we got here today. 100%. I want to recreate. You heard Michael make an audible sound. Michael, why'd you make an audible sound? Please.
Because it touched touched at that exact point because I received it, right? I felt it. It was integrous. It was congruent. The words aligned with the body language and the vocal qualities. You meant it. And so, the recreation of relationship or revolution was interesting for me. And now I'm curious as to what you have to share after taking ownership the way that you did. And also, I actually thought about taking ownership for my own things. And maybe that was a little bit of a mean thing I just said to you.
Yeah. And so exactly. And the person now feels convicted for what they shared authentically, not manipulatively. P.S. This is all integrous. It's transparent. It's seeking to add more value than we take. And that which we say is going to work a certain way is actually going to work that way. So this is not manipulative tactics. This is creating authentic, masterful, growth-minded, integrous relationships. Authentic, masterful, integrous, growth-minded relationships. That's what we're looking to create. And I said earlier, the other person may not be looking to create that. That's something we can't fully control, have some influence over, explore it, but authentically determine it. And very often we think it's like that. It's like a negative prism relationship, when actually it's not. Michael and I had our relationship come a couple of years ago to the brink of its extinction. To the brink of its extinction, because we weren't doing this masterfully. And we had a series of meetings, 6 or 7 meetings, that the first 4 of them, 5 of them, and probably every one of them until we were complete, the first 4 of them or so were extensive listenings of each other, extensive hearing one another. And then even we move forward from there to recreate a bunch of beautiful things, those meetings would begin and be substantially dominated by the depth of hearing each other. From that place, I feel heard, Michael feels heard, and our relationship is skyrocketing forward, right? So this is like we eat what we share. But Michael, we're definitely gonna have some folks that have to jump at the top of the hour. So for you, we want to give you the most value possible. And Michael, we have a few quick gifts that people have access to thanks to In-House Connect and Shy. And this will take about 4 or 5 minutes, and then we will be diving deeper. Footnote, this is also a training when you present anywhere on how you can present. Somewhere right before the hour mark in a 90-minute, you should have gifts for people that are authentically valuable. If you avoid that because you're afraid of it, you're like, oh my God, I don't want to seem like I'm a salesy person or something, you will be losing the value you can create with people going forward massively, because if all you do at the end of a talk is say, if any questions, call me, you have lost most people and most people won't. You need valuable gifts for people. P.S. These are not Oreo cookies, a bottle of wine. These are not, a bar of soap. These are authentically valuable. So Michael, what do we have for the people at In-House Connect in gratitude for them being here today and a massive valuable service for them going forward? Michael.
There's 3 things that we're offering as a gift to our friend Shai for putting us together with this wonderful community. And the first is referred to as an influence acceleration session. So what is this specifically? It's 2 sessions, 0 cost. I have to say that for my central nervous system. It costs you absolutely nothing. The first session, we get on the phone, we have a wonderful conversation where we assess your influence capabilities right off the bat, which allows us to then transition into the second session, also 0 cost to you, extremely valuable, but it's not costing you anything, where we can actually give you a customized plan to how to up-level your influence right off the bat. We showed you the whole formula. There's a tremendous amount to talk about. There's days and days and days we could discuss any of these topics with you folks. And because of that, there's so many different areas for us to fall into to really create a beautiful customized acceleration plan for you to up-level your communication skills, your influence skills, the ability to communicate transparently, whether it's understanding or learning a model of communication to create agreement formation going forward, whether it's to understand how to access all the different energies that are maximally influential when dealing with people, or if it's just learning deeper the how people make decisions, whether it's the scarcity mindset, matching and marrying, acknowledgements, love with boundaries, level 5 listening, emotional energetic transference, reciprocity, questions, validation, context, contrast, all of the various things that have a deep, deep impact on people when they're making decisions and being influenced to do it, all with transparency, all with integrity. But these 2 sessions, again, come as a gift to Shai and the entire In-House Connect community for allowing us to communicate with you fine folks. So that's the Influence Accelerator session, which I'm going to give you a QR code, a link, or even just the number to text message in order to get that free gift. The next thing that I believe we're giving away, Sean, to the first 60 people who go ahead and click through with the QR code, the text message, or the link that we send, is the first of two books, which is the group influence book that came from the beautiful Grand Cayman trip that we had 2 years ago. That was a wonderful book that actually gives you the capabilities not only of individual influence, but group influence as well. The ability to take control of a room, no matter how large it is, no matter how many people are present inside of it. This is a beautiful book that captures all of the essences of the influence mastery, the process mastery, the self mastery that is part of the Unblinded formula that gives you access to and the capability to actually touch hearts and souls, take messages from your head and your heart to their head and heart, and get them to act upon it. And that is the group influence book, which is one of the bonuses for the first 60 to click through. And then we have a second book. All of this is for free when you click through for the first group of people. And this is the Marketing and Sales Process Mastery ebook as well, which gives you access to process mastery. Anything to share with that, Sean?
Yeah, I think final, making sure that I think in there, we also have the self-mastery book, which is how you can emotionally deal with yourself around all of these. And I think the most relevant for everybody here today will be the self-mastery book, as well as the group influence book, but we also throw in the MSPM book, which could make you shine with some of the business development people to understand them better and some of the ways you can capture and drive value as in-house and general counsel. Capture and drive value, because you'll understand the four components of value: identity, relationship capital, financial capital, and unique skill sets, and how those are put together to create authentic deal value, and how many business people are so off on assessing value, as well as general in-house counsel are so off in value assessment and integration. So all three of those are for you. And just click that link, fill out the form, or text the number, and we'll set up your receipt of those gifts and have all this go on from here. Authentically from my heart, if you could find a more optimal book on the emotional dynamics that affect attorneys negatively and have people stay in very limited paradigms, please tell me what it is. I want to read it and I'll promote it. And if you can have a more optimal book that combines public speaking, leadership, and management in terms of its essence in the macro, then please let me know, because I want to study more deeply. We only wrote these books because of the gaps we saw in the books that were out there. Maybe we missed something. So please let us know. And thank you for that. And we do want to work with folks if you truly are growth-minded, you want to move your mission forward, you understand the power of distinctions and having your voice heard and bringing influence forward, then we're here. So thank you all for that, and we'll drop back in. So Michael.
And Sean, if I could just quickly share. So, one person has already reached out and said, love to connect more on this. Just please use the QR code or the text message or the link. Any of them all lead you to the same place. And unfortunately, Alexandra is very unhappy because you said these are not Oreo cookies. So I'm assuming Alexandra is a huge fan of Oreo cookies. So for Alexandra, you can message me directly and I'll make sure that we get you Oreo cookies as well on top of all of these things. But it's 3 bonus books. The Influence Accelerator session, which is actually 2 sessions, no cost to you. And for Alexandra only, nobody else should be messaging me and asking for Oreo cookies.
So Alexandra, here they are.
Alexandra, we're going to make sure to get you Oreo cookies as well.
Just the gift basket our marketing team had when we landed as our gifts here. And they were wonderful, and we're super grateful and received all of them, except all of the other dynamics of advancing the things in those books is why we're so excited, and it was so valuable to be here. But the Oreo cookies help as well. So we'll throw those in too.
So nobody should be leaving, because we're going to give you maximum value right now in the last 30 minutes together. You're going to get incredible value from the Influence Accelerator sessions. And Alexandra, I hope that by the time we're done in the next 24 minutes or so, that you tell me that what we're about to do is better than Oreo cookies. That's my new outcome for today.
That is outstanding. So thank you. Okay, so Michael, let's continue the conversation. So picking up where we left off, and we'll get to questions in about 7-8 minutes. Thank you so much for everything that you do. You shared from that place of our intention being to recreate a relationship. Can you give me some things that you are the most concerned about, and some things that you think are some positives in our relationship, if any? I'm not like digging for compliments, But what are some things you think that are positives, and what are some things that you really are frustrated about, like that you'd be afraid to even say to me because you'd offend me and it like destroy our relationship? But please, I want to create this like safe, open space for you to share those things. Please, Michael.
Yeah, I just obviously want to acknowledge how much you care about protecting, this company. I remember you telling me a joke about, orange jumpsuits and keeping us out of it, which of course we greatly appreciate. But I will tell you, when you are dealing with our sales teams and you're also dealing with the outside sales teams or the outside management, you have a little bit of a reputation of a person who tries to kill deals as opposed to make them come together, right? You look for what's wrong inside of the deal as opposed to first starting with things that are right and are actually positive. And that causes the sales teams to want to keep you out of it as long as humanly possible and only involve you as little as possible just because of that issue.
Well, immense gratitude for that. And I certainly can validate your feelings around how insanely frustrating that would be if you feel like all the work, the effort you put in, that we're looking to kill a deal. So thank you for that. And I acknowledge how you could feel that way. So I see it. I can think of several different conversations we had where I wasn't first acknowledging the positives in the deal. I wasn't acknowledging the work that went into it. And I wasn't sitting there and then coming back to some things that we could tighten up or really think about. So my apologies and thank you for that. And please, let's begin this momentum. What else do I do that you would love to see show up differently? Please.
That I think that's just really it. I think that's kind of the crux of the challenge. I do think you care a lot, right? And I don't think you would do some of the things that you do if you didn't actually care as much as you did, want to be as protective as much as you are. But I think there's a little bit of friction there when dealing with some of those challenges that I mentioned.
Yeah, no, awesome. I appreciate that. Is there anything that would be okay to share some things that we can build on, some things that you feel that resonate with you that are positives? And what would those be, please?
Obviously we have a lot of deals in the works right now. My strong preference would be that we get you involved early so they move faster with your, assurances and promises that you're going to be focusing more on achieving the results as opposed to looking for reasons why the deal may be troubling or bad or have conflict inside of it. But I'd love to get you involved earlier on as long as we can have those assurances.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And we would go through the sequencing of the positives. So then I would do overall. So Michael, I'm hearing you say is ... Am I hearing you correctly? All the things I heard at depth, I wouldn't have any buts. I wouldn't have any limitations. I wouldn't have anything except clarifying. So Michael, I'm hearing you say that you think I kill deals, that energetically I'm like sucking the air out of the room, and that whenever you hear I'm coming into a deal situation, you start to get hives and shake in uncertainty and shake your head and want to run out of the room. Am I hearing you correctly? I would micro overstate it or fully match what you think they're actually thinking. But Michael, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's much stronger language than I would use. I would just say, potentially more friction that is needed in a situation.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. So at least it's not as bad as I feared that I have been. So cool. So, and then I would continue with, so Michael will be okay then from that place if I share a few different things that may or may not, like I'd write them, may or may not resonate with you in the recreation of our relationship.
Without a doubt, yes.
So what I'd love to do is ask if you could hold some space, hold some light, hold some possibility that we can recreate this. And this is going to be a work in progress, but I'm going to show up and I'm only going to initially acknowledge the positive work that went in, where we are, what we see as optimal. So and everybody on the team knows that I see the why behind the what of the deal. I see the why behind the what of the deal. Because I'm imagining, Michael, it's something we haven't discussed yet, might be present for you. Footnote out of role. This is where our pattern recognition comes in, what we call level 5 listening. So remember, this is so our voice can be heard. All of this is leading up to so our voice can now be heard. Because if Michael's not hearing my voice in my advice about the deal, it's because he thinks I'm just going to kill all deals. that whatever I say is just going to be me being a pain in the butt. Like, that's it. So the recreation of that looks much more like this. So I'm only going to acknowledge the positives to demonstrate to you that I understand the value of the deal. And what I hope, Michael, is then later when I begin to identify with a different energy, a different vocal quality set, when I begin to move into explaining some things I really am quite certain we have to deal with, that you're going to know that I'm not just trying to justify my place in the conversation. I'm not just trying to justify my value. I'm not trying to kill the deal with negatives, that we can create an intentional structure of bringing about both the appropriate sharing of value with the other side, and I'll be demonstrating to you my understanding of the value that's at play and what went into getting to this place, that we are effectively and optimally, but not overly so, mitigating risk. Michael, I understand that deals have risk. I understand that we're going to have problems. And I understand that there has to be an amazing access point between moving the company forward and growing and mitigating risk. And I will do a much better job of energetically serving the group while not compromising my job, your job, our jobs to mitigate risk while growing the company. So, Michael, how does that resonate with you or not in foundationally recreating where we go from here?
I'm thankful that we had this conversation. I'm very appreciative that you approached me the way that you did. And I do feel like we're a little bit at a really wonderful inflection point where I think we understand each other much better. So I'm excited about what the future looks like.
Awesome. Pause, add a roll for a second. So what I want to do from here, Michael, is open up to some questions. If there are no questions, we'll move into a little deeper dive into unpacking through the prism of the formula slide, the influence formula slide, some of what transpired during that conversation. So, Michael, questions, thoughts, comments, anything else that you have to share? Over to you.
So I think Shai may have been receiving them, and I am eager for you to jump into the influence mastery formula as well. Shai, was there anything that was received by your team with regards to specific questions? Otherwise, I'll bring the glorious influence mastery slide up.
Yeah, so one question, it's a big question, and the question is basically legal is viewed in many organizations as it's viewed negatively, either as it holds up sales, it's cost center, it's Department of No, it's Department of No, not of KNOW, but of NO. Just some thoughts, advice, on how to reframe or combat that perception.
Yeah. And thank you, Shai, and thank you for that question. So I think the answer is everything that we've been chatting about. It's the recreation of this paradigm. The incredible irony that is present in all of this is this very conversation is the conversation that most people who are NO driven people don't want to hear about. And that's just the reality. So you can only begin to recreate that by accepting and honoring first why it's perceived as true. We have a frame, which we haven't leaned into yet, called the matcher versus the suboptimal mismatcher. And our job, our paradigm, is to match people and say yes enthusiastically as often as possible. So when we say no, it is received differently. Example, my mom. My mom said yes to virtually everything I ever asked for in my childhood. We didn't have any money, and I didn't ask for material things. I asked at 8 years old to be able to go play in the park with my friends. She created the ability for me to do that. I asked if I could be able to join a sport. She said yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. And when we moved when I was 11 years old, and I was devastated. And I asked if we could please not move. I had just been named class president of my 6th grade class, like the end of 5th grade, going into 6th grade. And I love these people. I felt safe. I felt stable. I felt like at home. And I was destroyed by the fact they were moving. And when mom said no, we have to move, and explained to me the why we had to move, and all the things behind the what, all the whys behind the what, I accepted it. I was sad, but I didn't see my mom as someone who always said no, because no, I was able to order, food in like once every 2 weeks. My mom, except if it was financial with money we didn't have, said yes, and always said yes. When I was 16, the next big no I could remember, and I really don't remember any no's between like birth, 11 we were moving, 16 in the moped. My mom said, "You're not getting a moped." I went a little crazy in the beginning because all my friends had mopeds. Then my mom sat me down and said, "Listen, I love you. How many times I said no to you in your life, Sean? How many times I said no?" And this was the beginning of her telling me I was going to go blind, had a visual impairment. I said, like, I can't do that. I love you too much. It's not safe. So that dynamic is the dynamic president. My daughter's high school soccer coach, and I love discipline. I love structure. I love acceleration. I was a peak performance athlete my entire life. I was captain of my Division I college baseball team at Columbia University. My daughter's high school soccer coach said no to everything. And they were very successful. They won a lot of games despite him, and they all despised him. They won in spite of him because his energy was no. You felt repelled by him. You didn't want to be near him. The amount of frustration, anger, and upset he caused for parents was unbelievable. There was this negative resonance, or negative repelling energy, resonance, coming from him. So the way to answer this question, we recreate this, is by appreciating how Oprah Winfrey said the reason that she held the microphone for 30,000 people, overcoming racial bias, gender bias, all the things that she did, the abuse, her teen pregnancy, and the friction and challenge that creates socioeconomically, statistically, all of it, right? Is because she said, I see you, I hear you, and what you say matters to me. And there's a reason people don't like lawyers. There's a reason people don't like the legal system. And if we ignore the authentic basis for those reasons, our voices can't be heard because we're going to be perceived like my Aunt Denise. And my Aunt Denise is a wonderful soul. And when we went to Grand Cayman, when I took my entire family there a few years ago, and her grandchildren were there, who I love very much. They live, in Pennsylvania. I live in New Jersey. We don't see them as much. It's my first cousin's children. They're amazing. And I wanted to teach them to snorkel, and 2 of them to swim. She had 5 kids. They called her No, No, Nana. No, No, Nana. So if we get have some fun today and say the way that we don't have in a giant Fortune 10 company, Fortune 500 company, whatever size company, if you want legal not to be perceived as the source of no, to not be perceived as no, no, Nana, then say yes as often as you can about things that are not going to create risk for the company, but instead will create emotional energy for the people who need energy. The business developers, they need energy, and they want to give you energy, but they're not going to give you energy if they perceive you're sucking their energy out. So when they come to you, awesome. Hey, listen, really great job. Get into this place. I see how much work this takes. I could never do what you do. I would never want to do what you do. It'd be so overwhelming, so crazy, so nuts. Thank you for doing this. Let me ask you a question. How'd you even get into sales in the first place? How'd you get into marketing and business development? How did you, why do you do this? See them, hear them, and be like, yes, this is awesome. Yes, this is awesome. Yes, this is awesome. And then after we've connected and built rapport, after we are no longer Charlie Brown's teacher saying wah, 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 then and only then we can move into some things that we have to work on. And it will be received differently. But having your voice heard begins with the recreation of how we got to not having our voice heard in the first place. A couple other quick thoughts before I seek another question. It's not the place for us. Say, well, you don't understand the culture of my company. I coach executives at Exxon and Disney. I can't imagine that your culture is too much different than some of the cultural dynamics I've heard at some of the biggest companies in the world, some of those toxic environments. I'm not saying Disney and Exxon are toxic. I'm saying that I understand toxic, negative, closed corporate culture at a very high level. And what I'm explaining to you is everybody wants to have fun and be happy. Everyone, when they feel safe, when they feel they can trust, and to have our voice heard, and people first need to trust that you're interested in hearing their voice and that their voice is safe. If they can trust that you're interested in hearing their voice and they're safe, they will be fervently interested in hearing your voice, provided they've not already decided for some incorrect or even nefarious purpose. Maybe they're stealing money from the company. Maybe they're accepting kickbacks, diverting opportunities. Happens all the time, right? So maybe they're a criminal in the company. Like, our voice isn't going to be authentically heard there, of course. But this type of communication can help us discern who we're dealing with and where they really are. So, Michael, back to you. Additional emphasis, thoughts, questions.
I just think it's such an excellent point to bring home the power of acknowledgments, the power of giving people the gift of listening, to open their listening. And you cannot understate the power of reciprocity, and when you give people your open listening, how they want to give it back to you, right? It's one of the most wonderful gifts. Even sometimes people ask, like, what do you give to the person who has everything they want inside the world? Sometimes it's just the highest level of listening that you could give, which is the greatest gift of making them feel seen, heard, and understood, opening their listening. And a lot of what you were doing today really does, it is an advanced formula. It's an advanced science that looks like magic at times. And sometimes people feel like they don't have access to this, and that some people are just innately influential. They're just an influencer. They're more charismatic than I am. When the reality is, it truly is a formula that is deployed consciously or unconsciously all the time by you and by others in order to get you to say yes, sometimes in integrity, but many times out of integrity.
So the biggest headline takeaway is, to make this as simple as possible, is don't be no nana. Have energy, have enthusiasm, and then we can pivot into having super healthy boundaries. People being seen, heard, understood, recreating our relationships, the pattern, the pathway to us being heard. We have the gifts that we have shared with you today. I'm going to ask Michael for his final. If you haven't filled out the form, fill out the form. If you haven't had a complimentary influence acceleration session in these books, if you haven't reviewed them, profound acceleration is present for you. And, we're there for you. Michael, your final on today.
Yep. And one of the greatest takeaways that I have the gift of is having spoken to probably 50 or 60 different in-house attorneys and people who came out of this program. The total Unblinded team has probably spoken to well over 200 at this point. And my favorite takeaway is, I didn't know what to expect from this. That was wacky, weird, curious, and unique, and I want to know more. And so if there's any part of you that's feeling just a little bit of curiosity and wanting to know more, I recommend that you use the link, click through. There's zero cost that's associated with it. It's extremely valuable, right? And I don't want to minimize that by saying it's no cost to you, but the longer you move away from this program, the longer you move away from what we discussed today and what Sean had shared with you of the power of Integrous Influence and the Influence Mastery that's available to you, the less likely you are to take action. And so for those 90 souls that are looking to deal with that specific challenge, or 90% of the souls that are looking to deal with that very specific challenge, or just making a change inside of their own career growth opportunities, it is available to you, and it is here. If not this, then what? If not now, then when? So I ask you to take action, click through, listen to what we have to say. And at minimum, it's, you know, two sessions of your time at zero cost, and it could give you profound change inside of your life.
Yeah. And my final will be, thank you, Shai. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Michael. And what if there is a different mechanism than most people think to lead a happier, more empowered, more successful, more fulfilled, more exciting, more energized, more vibrant life? And what if we can do that in being in positions that are traditionally seen as boring, sleepy? And what if we could become a value-adding source inside of the enterprises that we work with? And what if all of that is available as soon as you make a decision that there's always another level? Till the day I leave this earth, I will keep getting better every single day in every single way, every single time. That's my standard. That's my approach. Even when we don't cause the yeses we seek, and even when there's friction, there's always going to be, there's profound lessons and takeaways if we look at ourselves first and don't point the finger elsewhere. And that is the greatest way to have your voice heard, in the spirit of Abraham Lincoln, in the spirit of Barack Obama, in the spirit of any leader, paradigm shifter, Oprah Winfrey. These people's voices were heard, like them or not, at profoundly different levels. And there's a science that looks like magic, and it's available for all of you. We wish you all the greatest. Have a success. Shai, what you do is valuable, profoundly different. Congratulations. Thank you all. Have a blessed day. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sean and Mike. And thanks everybody for tuning in. That was excellent, excellent, excellent. And we'll wrap up here. Take care, everybody. Be sure to sign up for a acceleration, consultation if you haven't already. And once, thanks again, Michael and Unblinded. Take care, everybody.